and welcome to our writing podcast, The Author's Dilemma. I'm getting a whole bunch of pop-ups, so if I look distracted, it's because suddenly Facebook is freaking out.
No, no.
It's saying that it's disconnected, but we are not. We're here. So I am Hyrum Hawks, author of hard sci-fi and sci-fantasy, and here with...
I am Jennifer Carr. I write Christian romantic suspense as well as clean contemporary romance.
And we are missing today J.E. Jack. He's at a family thing and could not join us, but we will give him a pass because he is allowed to have a life, but we will give him a hard time, don't worry. So,
we do miss him, and our condolences are with him and his family because it's not just a family thing. It was the loss of his mother, and so we do miss having him, but he will be back hopefully next week. That'd be great.
yes. I was minimizing it, but yeah.
No, we better not, because I want him to know that we care.
we do care. But we still will have to give him a hard time because we do it anyway.
Oh, that's true.
So, tonight is our 26th episode, which means we've done this full 6 months, which is really weird. I guess last week would have been, but, July 4th kind of got in the way, but we had a lot of fun watching things get blown up. Did you have any incidents at local fireworks like we did?
No, we didn't even have any, newsworthy stories, but, we're Alabama, not Florida, and everything happens in Florida.
Well, in our case, the big event in Utah called Stadium of Fire, which happens at a football stadium, somehow something got knocked over and a bunch of fireworks shot right into the crowd. Several people were injured and one person pretty badly injured, hit in the face with a firework. It sounds funny, but also not.
Jeez
okay.
Louise, that is wild. Happy
Yes.
4th of July.
Yeah. Well, that is the danger of live fire. There's an argument to be made for using drones, because the worst that can happen is they fall on your head, which still wouldn't be fun. But...
I mean, golly. No, but we did enjoy just hanging out last week, so we did miss... I missed hanging out with you guys, but at the same time, I enjoyed hanging out with my family doing nothing but reading books and sitting on the couch.
Yes, and I'm guessing that knowing you, you read like 18 books in that period.
Just 2.
Just 2? That's
Just
still
2.
2 more than I did.
Well.
That is nice. So, let's talk business. I mean, as far as I'm getting excited. As soon as ACX clears my book, The Persian Asteroid, it will be out in audio form.
Yay!
So, I've never done an audiobook, so this is going to be interesting, setting everything up. But yeah, that's the excitement.
That's awesome.
Other than that, I'm just starting to really dive in and write again, and did a whole bunch of edits on my sci-fi murder mystery set in the far, far away, distant future of our galaxy. So that's pretty much all I've been doing. What about you?
That's fair. Okay, so book 2 of the Real American Country series is going to be done with edits hopefully by the 19th. She said it could be sooner, so we'll see. Which it really doesn't mean a whole lot other than I can, finalize the formatting and stuff. And then come September 1st, it'll be in the hands of my first ARC readers. And then it comes
Woohoo.
to the I know, woo, yay! And then it'll be out for the public on October 1st. And so while I'm waiting for all of that, I'm technically probably a quarter of the way through writing book 4, which I know that's book 2, book 4, but book 3's done. I'm just waiting for it to go to the editor. And so I'm working on book 4. And then I have a synopsis for a 5th book that I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, I think I need to, I'm redeeming a character. I had this niggle in the back of my head for weeks that finally I was like, okay, fine, you can have your own book. And so I'm redeeming the villain, if you will, the antagonist that you see throughout the series. And so that's exciting.
Oh, that is. Well, I haven't seen any news this last 2 weeks. Is there
Ooh,
anything exciting going on? Okay,
Yeah,
let's
I've
hear
got
it.
one. Okay, so I don't know where you are on the topic of fan fiction. Are you a reader of fan fiction? Have you ever been into or gotten into that?
No,
Okay.
not. I didn't. I knew it existed, but I think the closest I've come is realizing that a lot of the Pride and Prejudice remakes are just fan fictions.
Yeah, right. Okay, so there is a very, very popular fan fiction that is related to Harry Potter that
Yeah.
has been out for a while. It's been out for a very long time, and it's free to download and read because the writer of the fan fiction has just written it. I think they wrote it in kind of episodes, but now it's complete. It's very long. It's like, I mean, it's huge, and but it's free to download and read, so go and enjoy it, right? Well, somebody has decided, well, a couple somebodies, but one in particular, a pretty big influencer, has decided that she wants to turn them into books and sell them. Well, keep in mind that fan fiction is one, it's
Can't do
free, but it's not hers, right? She didn't write
no.
it, but because it's free, she has claimed that she can do it, like it's public domain or something. And so
It is
that
not.
has become a, it's not, you're right, it has become such a big thing. Like she's deleted a whole bunch of her accounts and trying to, you know, get away from the heat, but it's been a doozy to say the least, watching that unfold.
Well, I don't regret uninstalling all the social media off my phone except for Discord.
I mean, like it's wild. I don't understand why you would think that it's okay to take somebody else's idea just because it's free. That'd be like a day that I put my ebook on for free on Amazon that I'm saying you can go sell it yourself, and that's not what's being said at all. But anyway,
Hmm.
that's a gray ethical area, I guess, because technically fan fiction is written based on somebody else's work too. So I don't know where you land on that, but it's one big murky pond.
Yeah, well, fan fiction is completely legal as long as you don't try to sell it or distribute it. Now,
Mm,
the gray area is actually even posting it online,
yeah.
uh, because those characters are copyrighted. So
Hmm.
that is a gray area. I would love to have people making fanfic of my characters. The only question is
Right.
whether they make them something I can read. I don't
Right.
want them
Right.
going a little on the risque way of it,
Ooh.
but
Spicy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if people are making fanfic of your books, that means you've got engagement, and I
Yeah.
don't see a downside to having people say, "Oh, I just wrote a 14 novel long essay disc- that will lead people to read my books." And heck,
Right.
if the fanfic is good enough, maybe team up with them
Yeah.
and split the profits.
Right. I mean, honestly, that. But at the same time, you know, this, and I don't know if you even. It's related to Harry Potter. So, like,
Hmm.
how do you not realize that those are all copyrighted characters? I don't. You know, that person really. I mean, he's such a Harry Potter fan that they went and wrote this fictional alternative, right? It's a
Hmm.
totally different story. It takes the characters and says, "What if this happened?" And you know, it's. I've read it. It's wow. Like I loved it. I loved every bit of it, but I would never think of reselling their work. So anyway, but
No.
that was the
Well,
only news that I saw.
I'm a big fan of fanfic authors because they then can turn into authors write their own stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
that practice that they get with a fanfic is huge.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
I honestly think that if you're stuck in writing, that's not a bad idea to write a fanfic of something. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess I've written a sneer fanfic. I've always had new characters of my own, but like if you've ever read Bartimaeus by Jonathan Stroud, really fun world. The genies and all these entities that get summoned, and it's basically modern England, and so it's a great setting. And so I wrote a short story in that setting that was totally unrelated. It was just like I had an idea, it fit that setting, so I wrote it and moved on. Never posted it, but those those are the kind of things that can be really good warm-ups, good practice,
Oh
or
yeah.
even just training. So no,
Oh for sure.
I'm sure that woman will get her comeuppance because you don't mess with $1 billion industry like Harry Potter and not
Seriously.
have consequences.
Yeah. Well, and except she's not technically, like, she's separated by a few degrees, right? Because you've got the person who wrote the fanfic who wasn't selling it, and
Hmm.
you know it's totally different than this person is selling it. I don't know. I don't even know how they would work that out in
The
court. But
person
if
selling
she,
it will be the one that gets gone after.
yeah, yeah, and I hate it for her, but we all make choices.
Hmm. Now, I do think it's interesting when you see things like fanfics. It reminds you, and I'm gonna throw. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but if you ever watch the movie Charade from I think sometime in the '60s, Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant, great movie. It's in the public domain.
Yeah.
Because they didn't put the copyright notice in it properly.
Oops.
So it got released and is in the public domain. It can be. It's actually part of why it's hard to find copies of it at this point. You can buy it, but not really, because anyone who has a digital version can distribute it legally.
Wow, interesting.
So
well,
you got to be careful. Make sure you put your copyright in your book.
yes, seriously. And we have a whole episode about that. You could go back and on YouTube and or Spotify even and scroll through. I can't remember which episode it is right off the top of my head, but we did a whole episode about rights and copyrights and all of that good stuff.
Oh yeah, boy,
Oh,
just cracks me up though that Hollywood messed that up. You'd think that they have a person on staff that their whole job is make sure that happens. And after that incident, I bet they did. But,
Well, even if they did, I mean, those kinds of things slip through the cracks all the time. You're having an off day at work and oopsie, I forgot something very important. What did I forget today? Oh, crap. It's too late now.
yeah, a multi-million-dollar mistake.
Ooh.
That's how people get fired.
Whew.
Well,
All right.
it feels weird to be doing this without Josh. He normally is the one leading the charge on the talking, but hey, whatever. I can shoot the breeze with the best of them.
Let's go.
So we wanted to talk tonight about something that we probably all authors at some point face the question: do I stay in my genre or do I try new things?
Yeah.
I know that I'm re-listening to the Writing Excuses podcast, which I only can dream of being as ridiculous as those three at the beginning, but Dan Wells was getting pigeonholed into horror. Now, he is a horror writer, but he doesn't want to be just a horror writer, and so he had these first three books about a serial killer, and they're really good, but he didn't want to just do those books. He didn't want to be known as the serial killer author, and he still kind of is, but he branched out. He wrote in other genres, and he forced his way to not just be the serial killer author. And so, I know I've written two books in very different genres. And you're Jen, you're writing books they are romance, but they're not just one flavor of romance.
Right.
And so we wanted to talk about that. How do we take what we've got and try new things? Try to branch out.
Yeah,
So-
that's a fun one too, because technically, and we had this conversation when you were a guest on my podcast, and we were talking, about mixing genres. Are there genres you shouldn't mix and that kind of thing? And technically, when you start mixing genres, like I write romantic suspense, I write Christian romantic suspense. That's meshing three totally different genres. So I'm writing three different genres. So how far off do I have to go to say that I'm writing in a different genre? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I have one book where I don't know if I'm ever going to fully leave the sci-fi and fantasy genres, but so me and Jen, we chat, and I basically seek advice on how to write romances from her, because it's like a foreign world. They have their own rules. I feel like I'm this explorer going, and so I've read some books. She recommended me a mafia romance. Oh my gosh, that was weird. It was actually entertaining, but as I read it, I'm like, I'm a foreigner. This is not my world. I'm kind of like a tourist in this world. And it's good because I'm getting ideas, I'm exploring things. So I think that's the first thing I wanted to bring up about all this is the number one thing. Yeah, we may want to try. Well, you better read in that genre.
Yes. I think that's
I know
huge.
I
I
can't
think
without reading.
Right. I think any writer, though, that wants to be worth anything, they have to be a reader. It's very rare that you come across an author who says, I don't like reading, right? We all got sucked in at some point and we're like, ooh, now I have all of these stories in my head. And so we start writing, but you have to be a reader, and it's okay to branch out. As a matter of fact, when I get stuck writing in my romance, when I'm like, I don't know where to go from here, I put it down and I go read a genre that's not romance. Like, I will go find me a fantasy, I will go find me a sci-fi, whatever, and I will read outside of my genre, and that makes a world of difference.
Mhm. I know that the other big benefit of writing outside your genre is you can discover whether or not you actually see that as another genre that you could write in. So
True.
I will not write horror, not
Mm.
not true horror. I only know that because I wrote some short stories that were in the horror genre, and it was too depressing. I realized as I wrote about this poor AI that's abandoned by its creators because it's not learning as fast as the new generation I felt so bad for it. Way worse than when I had to read Jen's book and they just not talking. I have a problem.
But that's real life, though. And that's
I know. But that's the thing about horror is it is real life in a sense, but it's also not what I want. But I
Right.
wouldn't have known that if I didn't try it.
That's true.
And meanwhile, I'm trying to write some romance, and I'm like, okay, this is really hard, but I'm intrigued.
Sure.
With horror, I was like depressed, and I don't want to do it. But with romance, I'm like, okay, even if I don't write a pure romance novel, I need to understand these principles to have romantic subplots in my other books. And
That's
I
fair.
think that's actually been one of the most valuable parts.
Oh, yeah. Well, and honestly, even writing romance, though, like, you live interpersonal relationships, and all you're doing is just adding another level or another layer to that relationship that has more, different hormones involved, and different pheromones involved. And so you're just adding on a different layer to what you should already kind of know, assuming that you have healthy interpersonal relationships, or even if you have unhealthy ones, you can write those too.
Oh yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
okay. So
Seriously.
I do have questions, and that was going to be part of this. We wanted to kind of set this up. Writing outside your genre can be really helpful. Not just that you can then mix genres like we've talked about in the other podcast, but also because you can learn how to tie things together like we just said. So I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay.
I don't know the romance genre that well, in spite of studying it, in spite of at this point I think I know the Pride and Prejudice as well as any nerd like me could know it. But there are some things about romance that just still kind of mystify me. So I'm going to ask some questions. First and foremost, what is it that the woman wants to see in the situations? Now, I've talked to my wife, and she loves the more slow burn. But some women seem to like more fast. What is the actual flavor? What is that spice in the, not that kind of spice. What is the thing it is in the situation that makes it so enticing to a woman, but most men seem to not like? It's like some kind of turnoff. I'm trying to identify what that is.
Like, why do women want to read romance? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like, what gets
well,
them?
the same thing that makes women interested seems to make a lot of men disconnect from it.
Oh, that's an interesting question. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to come at this from the marriage and family counselor. I'm going to put that hat on and take my author hat off, because
Sure.
it's honestly, when women pick up a romance, it's because they are not always, but there's a void that they're trying to fill, right? And then I think that men are pushed away from it. They're like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that, because it has more of an expectation to it. They think that there are expectations that are unrealistic being put on men and that kind of thing. So what men need to understand is, one, women read those books because they want to be entertained. Maybe it's something outside of what they are used to. They're looking to learn something, even, or to, we all love, why do we watch Disney movies with happy ever afters. You know, why is that what we do? That because we want to live out somebody else's happily ever after because maybe we're not satisfied. There are a lot of answers to that question as to why women read romance and men don't. But the main one is to fill a void of some sort. But there's no one answer to slow burn, fast burn, insta love, insta lust. You know, there's not there's not a one size fits all to the female reader either, because we all have our eclectic tastes when it comes to romance. So it's to each her own.
Is that really the term used? Insta love and insta lust?
Yes, like it's. And love at first sight would be like an insta love, like boom, done, and you know, like
I like
deep.
That.
Yeah, it's like a deep, not just like love at first sight where it's like swoon and then you know fall in love. It's like a boom, we're in it to win it from the beginning kind of thing. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with the entire genre. I think that some other genres are a little jealous of the romance genre. Yeah. Because women make up the largest reading population in the world, and romance is the vast majority of that. And those women seem to read, the term graciously is almost an understatement, because there's a reason. Romance is almost, from what I saw, now I haven't looked in a year, so probably things haven't changed in this. Kindle Unlimited is almost universal, like that's where your romance novels go, because they want, these romance readers just want to read. Mm-hmm. And so they can say they don't have to pay as much if what they read is on Kindle Unlimited. Yeah. So as a romance author, and the whole romance genre, is there a pressure to produce books way faster than there would be elsewhere?
Listen, I don't know how some of these authors do it. Like, I don't know how, well, yes, I do. But time-wise, like, I know how they write their books because it is formulaic. Like, there is a formula to it that I do not subscribe to. Like, I don't write in a formulaic fashion. Like, my stories are real, and they would follow a natural flow of life. You know, whether the happily ever after comes in the middle and then you see what happens after, whether, you know, there's not going to be a third act breakup. When my Kindle says 72-75%, like, I'm not going to see my couples break up. That's just not what's going to happen. But the majority of these massive series writers, it's a act 1, act 2, act 3, breakup, end of story. And so it's I don't know how they do it, but yeah, there's a lot of pressure because there are some that are putting out 3 and 4 and 5 books a year, and I'm like, how? Because I'm doing good to get 2 a year out. It's expensive, right? It's a very well, as a self-published author, it's very expensive, and I'm kind of particular about needing my books edited and that kind of thing. So there is a lot of pressure, and I don't know where they find the time to write like that. Even if it is a formula like plug and play, that still takes a lot of time.
Interesting. So
yeah,
I have seen a lot of that formulaic stuff cropping up in television lately from some of the podcasts I've listened to about screenplays and whether it's television episodes, miniseries type episodes, or movies. It's almost like the heavy hitters in the industry have forgotten how to try to experiment, and so yeah. Most of the big name stuff follows that formula to the second.
Yeah.
I was reading that in TV series, like if you write a sitcom, the beats match that formula within a few seconds, or else they won't even consider it. Yeah. Now that wild. Takes a lot of. That's part of why those things are written as a team, but I don't know. So you don't subscribe to that formulaic approach, but have you seen feedback accordingly? Are there people that are dissatisfied that you don't follow the formula, or is it more people are more like, oh, this is refreshing? Or
Yeah, I've not had pushback on it for sure. And, one thing that I have heard is, and this has been from a couple of different readers, that, I got so invested in the characters and knowing what happened to them, because it's not just when I'm writing a romance story, yeah, there's going to be romance, but each character is a person, right? Each character is going on a journey. And so you get so invested in where each individual is going. And so when they finally find each other, then you're like, oh, that's great. But do they keep their own identity? And so you get so invested in the characters, and that's what most people, when they read my books, they're more invested in the story and not just the fact that, yeah, maybe they fell in love at some point along the way, which, that's fine. I love a good romance where it's like that is the main focal point, but I want to see strong female characters who have a brain of their own, and I want to see male characters who come to realize that, hey, this is what it is to be a real man, and stuff like that. And so yeah, no, I haven't had any pushback, and I think it's kind of nice. And that's why I write the books that I write, because you don't find them on the shelf just everywhere. Like, I don't want my books to read like everybody else's. Whether that works for me or not, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, so you used the word identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so having characters with their unique identity seems to be a critical part of writing books that people will care about long term.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, so studying romance a bit, I've studied Twilight. I haven't read Twilight. I don't want to read Twilight. But from my understanding of Twilight, there's some of the same problems that fall into Harry Potter. Now, I'm not saying this is bad or good. When I say problem, I mean from a literary standpoint, from an author standpoint, not from a reader standpoint. Readers love this.
Mm-hmm.
It's that blank slate character. Having a character who they do not act, they are acted upon, and the character, the reader becomes the character. Mm-hmm. So in a way, so the Twilight, whatever her name is, and then Harry Potter, Harry himself, they invite the reader to become them, is my understanding, so that you then are in the story, truly in it. Well, some of the strongest books we read, we don't want to be that character necessarily. Like reading Dune, I do not want to be Paul Atreides, but I want to know what is happening to him.
Right.
But with Harry Potter, I don't even know if he had a personality. But doggone it, his friends did, and I wanted to hang out with them. So with romance books, do you run into that with a lot of these formulaic girls? Are they blank slates?
Oh man, I love a good story. I'll come back and answer that directly, but I love a good story where I can put myself in that main character's shoes, right? Like I wanted to be Katniss Everdeen. Like I wanted to live the Hunger Games. Like I was like, I'd kick butt just like she did. That's what I wanted. I love those kinds of books that put you in that place. But yeah, in romance books, it is really hard to put yourself in that position, because that what's going to happen to them, the direction they're going to go, the choice they're going to make before they ever make it. And so it's like, why would I want to be that? Now, entertainment purpose, yeah, it's just like sitting down and watching a soap opera. Like, and I'm not gonna lie, I was 100% addicted to The Young and the Restless and All My Children all through college. Like I would not miss an episode of it. My grandmother just watched it. My mom secretly watched it while we were taking naps, when she thought we were taking naps. Like soap operas were the thing, but you knew what was going to happen. Even by then, you're like, oh yeah, his doppelganger is going to come to town, whatever. And so that's what these books are like. They're very entertaining. They're fast paced. They get you through the story, but you know what you're getting into as soon as you open the pages. And that's what I try to avoid with my characters. Like I want you to see and root for them. Like not just be them. I want you to root for them, to watch them do hard things and to grow up in that kind of thing.
Yeah. A quick aside, because I want to know, when you stayed home sick from school, you watch Price is Right.
That's
Did
right.
your mom come in the room and turn off The Young and the Restless? Because that's what came on next.
That's exactly what came on next. It was just so happened nap time, and you need to go rest. Also, I'm pretty sure.
Soap operas.
Oh man, I think she watched Dallas too. I think that Dallas was one of the ones that it was, and but I just aired her dirty laundry all over the place. But yeah, that's. I
can
knew
tell you,
I might have been
my
young.
mom was diligent at making sure that when Price is Right was over, the TV turned off and it did not come on again until cartoons were on.
Right after lunch and before and when school
80s
got
were
out.
great.
That was.
Oh, Jen,
so
I think
good.
we've lost your audio. Either that,
Rude.
or I've lost my audio.
Can you not hear me?
One of us has. It looks like you're hearing me. So I will talk while you're playing with that. So, interesting thing I've discovered as a romance.
Can you hear me? What just happened?
Well, excuse our technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Mine says it's connected.
Oh, there it is.
What happened?
That's the
That
problem
was
with
weird.
live performances.
I know
hear
it.
you. Look,
Okay.
my headset just went off and then went back on.
Weird.
Right. Okay.
I'm
So,
sorry.
trying to experiment with romance novels, I've found the biggest challenge is I don't like some of the characters to the point that I don't want to write them because I, in real life, would want to punch them. So there's an experiment I'm doing where the man is literally the worst guy. Now, but he's super charming. He's got the whole dark triad. So he is now to me, he's the enemy. But in many ways, he's going to be the man from, what's that one called? 50 Shades of Grey. He's the billionaire that's so suave, but the female character is like, no, I'm not interested in you. And that drives him insane. So that's kind of the premise. But I wrote the first couple chapters and I was able to write her perspective. I basically just said, what would my wife, what would my sisters do? And it was, as Jen said, it was realistic. But the man was like terrible. I just could not write him. And it was really cliche and really annoying. And I'm just like, So, Jen, we haven't actually talked about this, but how would you gave me a tip to dissociate as I wrote it.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So I pull from people that I know without, you're not going to use the whole person, but you've seen these people, right? You've experienced these people, and you can't be afraid to channel, unfortunately, yeah, but you can't be afraid to channel these people because in the end that there's going to be justice served, right? So you have to be able to put yourself in the position to be that person, to do the things that you know that they've done, that you've seen them do, and you have to just be aware that in the end they're going to get their comeuppance. And I know that it's hard because you're like, oh, it might change me. It's not going to change you, right? Like, you're going to actually process things very differently. It might even make you a more empathetic person. Do we like people who do bad things? Not usually, but we might even find out where they're coming from, right? Because you've heard the adage, hurt people, or hurting people hurt people, or people who have been hurt turn into abusers, or whatever the case may be. Like, you've heard these things because they're true. And so you have to be able to channel that and then maybe feel some empathy in the end and be like, okay, now I understand why they are that way. You do have to wear a lot of different hats, and when it comes to writing bad characters, mean characters, antagonists, I don't know, whatever you want to call them.
Well, especially for me, the challenge is writing an antagonist who actually is the protagonist.
Right.
So she's gonna, in the end, they're gonna get together. It's a romance.
Right.
But he starts out as an awful human being that I would have advised my daughter to stay well away from.
Right.
And in fact, she does stay away from him by the end. She leaves. And he has to face himself. How do I keep him sympathetic at the beginning? Enough sympathy that you're like rooting for him, but enough awfulness that you're like, don't go near him, woman.
That's where the inner monologue comes in. And that is something that I think a lot of romance books are lacking, is that inner monologue that shows you who the person is deep down at their core. I like to give them a voice outside of actual dialogue. I like to see what they're thinking and how they're feeling so that it is easier for people to relate. this incident happened and it made me think of the time that my dad abandoned our family or whatever. It takes you back to these moments of, you see glimpses of, there's a reason they're like this. There's a reason that I am a narcissist, or not really, you'd have to be a diagnosed narcissist, but a pseudo narcissist, where you look at their tendencies or their traits and you think, oh, they could easily go that way. Well, it's probably a defense mechanism of some sort. Why is there a defense mechanism? Because of their childhood, what happened in their childhood. And you just kind of have to dig down those layers and reveal to the reader, because we don't know. You know, because you're writing them. So you have to show what made that person that way. What happened? What circumstance are they facing? What terrible thing caused them to put up those walls, to put on that mask, to put on that persona? Is that who he is 24 hours a day? Probably not. It gets exhausting to carry that mask around and wear it. So show him when he's at home, and what he's thinking. I hate being alone. I'm lonely. And you want him to find the cure for his loneliness. So you have to kind of give the reader more than just his outward appearance and his outward behavior. You have to give them more. Show them what's on the inside.
All right, so two things. One, we're calling this episode Romance for Dummies. Two, I think what you're describing with this character is sometimes hard for a discovery writer, because in a sense I need to know his backstory before I write him.
Mm-hmm. Because
at the moment he's very much a twirling mustache villain in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I have to, and maybe as a discovery writer, I have to do what I've been advised to by my writing group and write backstories for the characters. That is so hard. But giving them more three-dimensionality, because right now, in my mind, he is a pencil mustache villain that truly I despise, but that's because he is the stereotype of all the people that have hurt people I know.
Right. Well, and I'll make it a little easier for you, and this is not because I'm out to make $1, but it only costs 99 cents. On my website, I have this character workbook. Like it is pages and pages, hundreds and hundreds of things that you can, if your character has this little quirk about them, write it down. And you have this thing for about 5 characters, enough room for about 5 characters, I think. I mean, we're talking who their grandma is, what the relationship is with their grandfather, what, their siblings. And it breaks all of these things down, all the characteristics, all the traits that you want to keep up with, because that way you can go back and reference it. You write it down one time and it's there. For that matter, you can make your own digital spreadsheet that when you think of, okay, here's their backstory, just go type it into your spreadsheet, since you like spreadsheets so much, and be like, hey, this is something that I'm going to reference later. Like, this is why they are this way, and that you can bring to the forefront later. Just keep notes when you think of it. You don't have to plan it, because when you discover it, be like, oh, let me write that down real quick, and just write it down.
Yeah.
Just write it down. Yeah.
And the other thing I would throw in there is revise. I throw that out to all of our listeners. If you find yourself getting partway and you realize, oh, this character would be so much better if they had, well, I'm going to pull Phineas and Ferb out, and lost their choo-choo train when they were little, and that is their villainous backstory, but you didn't write them that way, you can revise it. And in fact, the irony about revision, and I throw this out to everyone, is if you don't revise, you're never going to truly take off.
That's true.
Brandon Sanderson wrote 13 novels before he figured out how to revise. He admits that freely. This is one of the most successful authors on the planet. Yep. And he says he'd have been published earlier if he'd just learned how to revise a few books earlier. Yeah. Which is hilarious. I mean, people think of him as just this machine that pumps out books. Well, if you follow him, you also realize that he pumps out the book and then he has to go and revise the book. And he's an outliner. So us discovery writers need to outline a few more times as well. So don't feel bad about that. Well, I think this has been very valuable. I've learned things, and I'm sure that some other romance authors are out there like, why is he trying to write? But hey, try all the genres. I agree. I've even considered trying some really weird genres like literary. No, I'm joking. I would never do that.
You'd never do that. Well, I tell you what, if anybody has questions about the episode or about any of our books that we have written, or you want to just talk to us about being authors, you can reach us at authorsdilemma@gmail.com, and one of the three of us will respond at some point. You can find us if you want to re-listen to the episode on Spotify and on YouTube. What else?
Yeah, well, and the last thing, I would give you all hope. Anyone can learn new things if you just practice.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of fun in this. So
There
thank
really
you all
is.
for joining us, and we'll see you next week with Josh as well, and we'll move things forward. So good night.
Bye.